Converted man here?
It's the converted man.
Converted man here.
Hello, my name is Jean-Paul Cazayoux, and I am a 10th grader at Stockholm International School. Today I would like to discuss a very big topic, the topic of God. Many scientists and philosophers have been trying to answer the question, does God exist, for thousands of years? And yet, we still have difficulty answering that question, and there are many people with different views on this topic. Today I would like to show you the scientific evidence that we have that support that God does exist.
Well, for a less than 10-minute video on the most complicated and deep philosophical topic, I expect to see some really good scientific evidence as well as some very in-depth thought. Now, it's less than 10 minutes, which already is an indication that you didn't really put as much effort and energy into this as you could have, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you say everything so quickly and so precisely that you're able to cover the subject of God within a mere 10 minutes. Somehow, though, I highly suspect that that's not the case.
Next, I would like to define terms. In other words, I would like to explain what I mean when I use certain words. Like, for example, when I say God, I don't mean the big scary man in the sky. I do not mean what a 3-year-old might think of God. When I say God, I mean the uncaused cause.
Well, I'm very happy to see that you're defining terms, but could you also define the term of uncaused cause while you're at it?
That created the universe. One might argue, well, no, God didn't create the universe, but I'll get to that later. Science. The dictionary definition of science is the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. Sounds like a mouthful, but basically what I mean is science is a way created by man to formulate how and why things happen through observation and experimentation.
I'd really like to know where you're getting your definitions from, because that doesn't sound quite right to me. But please, proceed. Also, please remember that he said the following.
Today I would like to show you the scientific evidence that we have that support that God does exist. Naturalism. The philosophical belief that everything arises from natural properties and causes, and supernatural or spiritual explanations are excluded and discounted. Faith. The belief in something without proof. But there's two different types of faith. There's reasonable faith, and then there's blind faith. For example, I take it on faith that there is sweetened condensed milk in this can, because that's what the label tells me. If I walked up to any random person and asked them, hey, what's in this can? They'd say condensed milk, and rightfully so. How about now? What do you think someone would answer if I walked up to them and asked them, what's in this can? They wouldn't know. If someone said, there are carrots in this can, and the label is off, how would they know for sure? This is an example of blind faith.
So, this is an argument to analogy. Now, not necessarily fallacious if you had a good analogy, but you don't. So you said, if I walk up to a random person on the street with this can that is labeled condensed milk, what would they say about it? Well, it's kind of an odd thing for a random person to walk up to you and be like, hey, what's in this can? I don't know, man, get away from me, run away. You know, okay, so maybe you have like a film crew with you so they can tell it's part of some television show or YouTube. You have a sign saying this is for YouTube. You say, hey, this is for YouTube. I'm going to be asking you a simple question. You pull out the thing and you say, what's in this can? A lot of people would probably say condensed milk, because that's what the label says. But the more skeptically minded people would say, I don't know, because there is no way to know what's in the can, because you could have put any label that you wanted to on that can. You could have removed the contents of the can and filled it with something else, or just left it completely empty. It might not even be an actual can. It might be something that looks like a can, but not actually be a can in and of itself. So I have no way to answer that question. Now, if I was to be a little bit nicer to your analogy and say that we went to the store, you and we were to grab off the shelf a condensed milk, neither one of us has faith that that is condensed milk. What we have is prior experience that has informed us that every time we have gone to the store and purchased an item, that the item that we purchased is in fact the real correct item. It has been labeled correctly, and if not, that's why we keep our receipt and we go back to the store and we return the item and get it refund or replaced with a correct item. Now, if every single time that condensed milk from that particular company wasn't condensed milk, but it was something else, then the store would have to probably take it off its shelves, send it back to the company. They would lose money, the store would lose money. There'd be a lot of issue involved in that, and the company itself would lose some popularity, integrity. People would lose respect for that company. There might even be a news coverage about that all of these condensed milks were pulled off the shelves when we found out that they didn't have condensed milk. So it's not based on faith at all. It's based on prior experience. Yes, the can is not see-through, but our prior experience informed us that every time we have bought a can in the past, it has been labeled correctly. And if not, we're surprised by that because it's a result that we didn't expect. And then we rectify that situation by going to the store and returning it, so on and so forth, even writing a letter of complaint to the company, making phone calls, whatever, maybe even a lawsuit could be involved, depending on how severe the mistake was. This analogy reminds me an awful lot of the analogy of you have faith whenever you sit in a chair. You have faith that the chair won't break under your weight. That's not faith. That's prior experience informing you that every time you have sat on the chair, it has never collapsed under your weight. And the day that it does is the day that you're very surprised and shocked that your chair collapsed under your weight because you didn't expect it to behave that way. So it's not faith, it is prior experience and repeated testing of that situation that informs you that more than likely the chair is going to support your weight, and more than likely that the can you're buying at a store and pulling off the shelf is going to have the thing that it says in you. But in the scenario you present where you're asking somebody randomly, is this condensed milk? Yeah, you're probably right. People are going to say yes, because people don't think skeptically, and they should, and that actually is the definition of blind faith. You're taking on faith that what the can says is what the label says is what's in the can. You have no evidence that that's what's in the can. In fact, once you open the can, then in fact you know what's in the can. Then you said blind faith is taking the can with a blank label and saying that there's carrots inside. Well, you left it there. You left the analogy hanging. What you should have then said is, and they believe it. So I tell them that it's carrots, and they believe what I've said. That is faith. In fact, it's not just blind faith, that is what faith is. I don't know where you're getting this idea of reasonable and blind faith from. The only time I've ever heard reasonable faith used is by William Lane Craig, and surely you're not plagiarizing your material. This is all original content, right? Yeah, but anyways, your analogy falls completely apart and is thus awarded a logical fallacy point, which is not a good thing, by the way.
Proof. Evidence or argument establishing a fact or the truth of a statement.
You know, it would have really been good to use a citation here as a project for a school. I would think that you'd have citations up the wazoo in order to achieve a very good grade on your project. But nonetheless, you have absolutely no citations whatsoever. Okay. But by proof, I'm not sure what you're going for here, because really in the real world, there's only one place we find proof, and that's in mathematics. Logic says logical proof. Science has scientific proof. And in that sense, we do have proof in other areas. But because your definition is so sloppy, I'm going to have to say that this is a half-truth. It's not really true what you're telling us right now. It's not really false either. It's just that you didn't go far enough with your definition to really tell us what version of proof you're talking about.
And last, but most certainly not least, evidence. The available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true or valid. Now, I would like to get into some hard evidence that we have to support that God does exist.
This is an interesting switching of terms. Earlier you said you're going to have scientific evidence. Now you're going to have hard evidence. I'm going to go ahead and call this a change of terms, which would fall into the formal fallacy category. I'd love to call it equivocation, but you didn't use the same word in a different way, so I can't call it that. Now, a formal fallacy only really matters for the sake of you don't really comprehend logic, and or you made a mistake in logic. Sometimes that happens, and that's okay. Even I, one time, made a formal fallacy. I admitted to it and tried to correct it, but nonetheless, it can happen. So yeah, sure, one isn't that bad, and it doesn't necessarily indicate you don't really understand logic, but still, it's a mistake you might want to avoid. Stick to the term that you said in the start, scientific evidence, not hard evidence, which would be slightly different. But nonetheless, evidence is evidence, and whatever you've got would be very interesting to hear.
But first, I want to talk about atheism. What do atheists think? Well, as everyone knows, atheists deny God's existence.
Oh, no. 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 No, 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 no. No. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. You got it wrong. No, 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 no. Straw man is what you just did. Oh my goodness. No, you are wrong. You're wrong. You're very, very wrong. Listen to my song. You're really, really wrong. Wrong, wrong. You are so wrong. Here's some more face palm because you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're very, very wrong. Bump, bump. And if you don't want me to sing again, don't do that, straw man. That's like an appeal to ad ballium of me threatening you with horrible singing if you continue to do logical fallacy of straw man on what atheists think or what atheists are or anything that follows. Atheism is... The thing is, you said atheists think, which is not just a straw man, now it's also special knowledge. You don't know what we think. You can't know that. Oh, so, and you know what? This is starting to sound more and more plagiarized as we go along. It doesn't seem to be original. It seems to be copied from some website. At any rate, you've got two logical fallacies, and I'm out of face palms, so back to your video.
No matter what. But if you walked up to an atheist and asked him to show you some evidence to support that God does not exist, they couldn't do it. That's because no one can. Not even science.
Oh no. Oh my words. I'd rather do Karm Harm Part 3 than do this. That's pretty bad. Okay, so that's called shifting of the burden of proof, number one. And secondly, nobody can prove a universal negative. You can't prove that I'm not God. You can't prove that there are no leprechauns. You can't prove that reindeer can't fly, and so on and so forth. And there's any number of universally negative claims that we can't prove because that's not how things work. So, yes. And so what? So, let's say that your straw man / special knowledge from before was right, and all atheists everywhere say that there's no God. And let's just say that they can't prove that. And so what? that doesn't make them wrong. That just means that they have no evidence to support that claim, which would mean that they have faith. Okay, now we have to ask another question. Is faith good or bad? If faith is good, then it's fine that they have faith. If it's bad, then we should try to have as least amount of faith as possible. So then we'd have to ask them, why do you say that there's no God? And then we would find out that it's not simply that they don't have evidence, that we were just assuming that they had no evidence, but they have certain reasons for it, arguments for it, which isn't evidence, but might be a type of evidence. Just like you tried to shift what evidence you're talking about when you said scientific evidence to hard evidence. Now you're talking about philosophical arguments, which are not evidence. Unless I want to give you the idea that a logically coherent argument could be evidence, but that can't be the case because a logically coherent argument isn't evidence and can't be evidence for anything. At best, a logically coherent argument should make us not be skeptical of the conclusion. Now, that means we should further investigate the conclusion because it might turn out that the conclusion is independently, in and of itself, actually false, even though our logic seemed to have worked all the way to the last step. That's where logic ends and the science begins, because to find out if the conclusion is actually true, we have to look to the real world and find out if it's actually true, which then goes back to the question of whether or not we should even bother with informal logic, but I think we should because it's a very good time saver to use to say, okay, look, I'm filtering out these bad arguments so that I don't have to waste time investigating claims that are logically incoherent. So, then, if you did have evidence for God, fine. Great, wonderful. Then you just simply present that evidence, you blow out atheism out of the water. In fact, forget that, you win a Nobel Prize because you found scientific evidence for something that has been thus far philosophical in nature. So, waiting for your scientific evidence or your hard evidence, quote unquote, which didn't need for you to introduce atheists into the equation at all. All you had to do is say, here's the evidence, done, bam. Good game. Game over. I win. Everyone else loses. I get my Nobel Prize by submitting my project to a scientific foundation of some sort. I get James Randi's $1 million too while I'm at it, and I get an A++ on my paper. So just do that. Just do what you said you were going to do. Give us the evidence.
Science cannot disprove or prove God's existence because God is outside of our universe.
Say what? Didn't you earlier say?
Today I would like to show you the scientific evidence that we have that support that God does exist. Science cannot disprove or prove God's existence. Scientific evidence that we have that support that God does exist. Science cannot disprove or prove God's existence. Scientific evidence that we have that support that God does exist. Science cannot disprove or prove God's existence. Scientific evidence that we have that support that God does exist. Science cannot disprove or prove God's existence.
Yeah, that's what I thought you said, so... Oh, there goes the phone again. Hold on. Yes, hi, this is Deconverted Man. Who's this?
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, well, it's going okay. You know, I'm still single, which really sucks, and not in a good way. And I'm doing this video right now where I'm analyzing some kid that plagiarized an apologetic website. And hold on, who am I talking to?
This is an outright lie. I'm lying to you, but that is a paradox.
Oh yeah, pretty much you're the only one that ever calls me on the devil phone. Although, that one time you called me on the Lobster, which was really weird, because I didn't know that my Lobster could also serve as a phone. Anyways, I'm gonna hang up on you right now.
Don't hang up on me.
No, I'm hanging up, and by the way, you sound like a sick Arnold Schwarzenegger. So anyways, as I was trying to say, the kid here's just made an outright lie. He told us something at the start of the video that wasn't true, and we found out later, so he lied to us. Back to the video.
By definition, outside of the realm of what science investigates. Science can only work within our universe, but if something is outside of our universe, it'd be impossible to observe it. Think of it like this.
So basically, it would be like the can that's not labeled, and you don't know what's in the can because it isn't labeled until you open the can, but you can't open the can because science can't open the can, so you just have to pretend like you know what's in the can, right? No, you're going to do a different analogy. Okay, here we go.
If a comic book creator were to create a comic book character, and that character wanted to prove that he was created, he can't simply jump out of his book and show everyone his ultimate creator. But at least he still has evidence to support that his creator created him.
Wait, how would that work? A comic book character that has sentience. Wouldn't that comic book character necessarily be restricted to the realm that it was created in, and thus have no proof that it had a creator in the first place? So, no to this ripoff of the watchmaker argument? What the bleep?
So, like the comic book character, we cannot jump outside our universe and show everyone our ultimate creator, because it's impossible. What else do we know?
So how could you or anyone else know anything about it, since there's no way to know anything about it? If there is even such a thing as, quote, outside our universe, end quote, how would you even substantiate that that exists in the first place? Before saying that there's anything beyond it or outside of it, you would have to know that there is such a thing as beyond or outside of it, which you don't know. So this is just, I know that this is outside our universe somehow. How you know that? Bleeped if I know. But there is no way that you would know it. You believe it, perhaps, but you don't know it. And you haven't shown it either.
Well, we know for a fact that the universe is indeed expanding. It was proven at the Mount Wilson Observatory in Los Angeles by 3 men, Edwin Hubble, Albert Einstein, and Georges Lemaitre, who was a Catholic priest who came up with the Big Bang Theory.
Hey, a Catholic priest had something to do with the discovery. Make a big deal out of it.
Albert Einstein originally thought that the universe was always here, in a steady state, neither expanding nor contracting. But later, Georges Lemaitre showed Einstein, using a mathematical formula, that the universe was indeed expanding. But Albert Einstein didn't want to believe it, because it challenged all of his assumptions on life. But Albert Einstein even acknowledged that Lemaitre's math was correct, but he didn't want to believe the implications of that math. Later, Edwin Hubble showed Albert Einstein at the observatory that the universe was indeed expanding.
Okay, I know that I've heard this same story been told in an apologetic situation. It might have been a book, and I'm thinking that it's a book that Steve Shines reviewed, and I'm thinking that it might be the God's Not Dead book, but I'm not sure offhand. But I am pretty sure that I've heard this exact story been made a big deal out of by an apologetic source. So I'd have to go back and look through all the Steve Shines talking of the God's Not Dead. If any one of you wants to do that work for me, go ahead, because really I'm lazy and probably I'll not do it because laziness prevails. But at any rate, why would this matter? Why is this a big deal? Well, the spin here, of course, is to try to be like, look, Einstein's doubting this because it will challenge his worldview, so he's going to be doubtful. See, if he just had faith and believed the first guy, then that would be better, I guess. But no, see, Einstein was a good scientist, so yeah, he's going to be skeptical until he's presented with the evidence. His motives are irrelevant, by the way. You should be skeptical of anybody's ideas until you're presented with the evidence. So far, we have no evidence given to us by this kid, which isn't really his fault. It's the website and or book that he is stealing from's fault. And by the way, yes, I'm making a special knowledge claim to say that he's plagiarizing / stealing from a website and or book. And you get to be skeptical of my special knowledge claim. But see, unlike this kid, I'm admitting that I don't know that he really got this stuff from a website or book. But if I was to make a bet on it, I would totally bet whatever amount of money on the idea that he is plagiarizing from a book and or website all of his ideas here. Not a single thing that he has said has been original other than introducing himself and telling us that this is a project for his school. Nothing else so far is anything that I haven't read or heard or seen before. Seen also being read, so I guess that was redundant to say. Back to the video.
Even Albert Einstein himself said, "This is the most beautiful and satisfactory explanation of creation to which I have ever listened."
And cherry picking. Hey, look, Einstein said this, and it sounds like he's talking about creation, meaning that there must be a creator. So Einstein is saying that there's a creator because he said the word creation. Cherry picking for the win, everybody! Yay! Also appeal to authority, because, you know, Einstein was an authority figure, so yeah, I'm going to count that too as an appeal to authority beyond being cherry picking. So, yeah, moving on.
So, we know that the universe is expanding. The universe has not always been here. The universe is not infinite. We're not in infinity.
Actually, the only thing that we do know is the observed universe is best explained by the Big Bang cosmology, or as it should have been called, the Big Expansion cosmology. We cannot know about the parts that we cannot observe. So anything that you want to say on this matter is nothing but a special knowledge claim.
We know, due to the expansion of the universe, that the universe is 13.7 billion years old. So let's go back in time. 13.7 billion years to be exact, to the very beginning, before the universe started expanding, before there was a universe. So here we are, before the universe started. Before the universe started, there was absolutely nothing.
But you can't know what was, quote, before, end quote, the universe, or even if there is such a thing as before. And if we're going to go cherry picking, why not cherry pick Stephen Hawking, who said anything that came before the universe could not affect what happened after? But far be it for me to appeal to authority and cherry pick. It doesn't matter. We don't know. That's the truth. We have no idea if that's even a thing. But I'm going to make you stick to this. You just said that there is nothing. And I'm going to make you stick to that point. Even though you have no way to know that that is the way it is, I'm going to make you stick to what you said. Okay, so there was nothing.
No space, no time, no life, no light, absolutely nothing. So, if there was absolutely nothing before the universe, then we got something? How is that possible?
Oh, I just can't wait for you to tell me how it was possible. I'm just on the edge of the seat of my pants of the... is it God? Is the answer going to be God? I bet the answer is going to be God.
Because, as we all know, science tells us you can't get something from nothing. I'm sure you've been told at least once in your science classes that matter cannot be created nor destroyed, only transformed.
So it seems to me that we are forced into a couple of choices here. Either everything that we understand about physics doesn't apply to the beginning of the universe, which is possible because before, quote-unquote, the universe, there might have been other laws in place or absolutely no rules, so that something coming from nothing could happen, because it just could. There wasn't any reason that it couldn't happen. The other possibility is that you're wrong, that there never was a nothing, there always was something, and that something eventually became the universe that we can know about. Those would be two possible choices, but there's plenty of other choices, so I don't want to be forced into a false dichotomy, but again, I'm sticking to what you said. There was nothing. which means that we got it wrong. In every case, with the exception of the universe itself, something can't come from nothing. That would be the new statement that we would have to make in science if it turned out to be true. So if what you're saying is consistent, then your new science that you've developed somehow without any scientific evidence to back it up is that in science class we should teach matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change. But the exception to that is the origin of the universe itself, where everything came out of nothing. We don't know why that happened or how that happened, but that's true because this kid on YouTube made a video saying that that's what happened. So we're just going to go with that.
Which is why we're still having trouble answering the question if God exists or not. Because if the expansion of the universe is true, and the universe did have a beginning, then it goes against science, because we got something from nothing.
You're wrong. That wouldn't go against quote-unquote science. Because when we learn something new, that new knowledge is science. So if we learned that the moon is hollow, that would change a lot of things. That would completely change the way that we think about things and do things, and it would just revolutionize a lot of things about science, because it goes against what we understand to be true. But we wouldn't just throw our hands up in the air and go, well, we don't understand how the moon could be hollow. Must be God. Must be aliens, must be time travelers, must be the lizard people, or whatever other personal incredulity, appeal to ignorance that we want to throw in there. No, what we would do is take that new data and incorporate it into science, and then reevaluate the old data and see what it says, and re-look at everything that we've done, especially for something so massive as the moon being hollow. That would be a big one. That's why I picked that particular example. So, it's not against science. When we find out something new, it changes our understanding, and our understanding has to then develop to match that new understanding, which is why science is an ongoing process. It's not a static process where everything is always the same, because we learn new stuff about the world and universe around us, and we go, dang, I didn't know that before. That's pretty awesome. Let's talk about that. That's progress. That's amazing. Reality, as we discover it, is going to tell us what reality is. And we're just trying to get as close as we can to figure out what that is. And science is the best tool that we have to get closer to what reality is like. What you're doing is not science. What you're doing is piss-poor philosophy based on piss-poor apologetics.
Another thing about our universe is that it must have a very specific setup to support life.
So we're going to be dealing with the fine-tuning argument, which shouldn't even be seriously considered anymore. Anybody that knows anything about fine-tuning knows that it's referring to mathematical constants. The fine-tuning isn't about anything other than the mathematics we use to, and that mathematics is finely tuned to understand certain variables in the universe. Now, what the apologist does is says, well, if you changed even one of these, then life wouldn't be possible. No, that's not necessarily true. Our type of life might not be possible, but that doesn't mean that no type of life would be possible. Other types of life might still arise. Carbon-based life might become impossible if you change the variables enough, but that doesn't mean that other type of life is impossible, and without some demonstration that that is the case, you have nothing to stand on. I would like to see computer simulations that show different possible constraints of physics, that show different universes and what they would do or not do, and then you might have the beginnings of an argument there if you could show that every single time that there was no life at all. But of course, how you would develop a computer program that could do that in the first place is far beyond me. But nonetheless, you don't have that. You don't have another universe other than this one to point to and go, see, there's no life over there. What we do have is our immediate solar system, where the only other place that we might find life so far is Mars, and it's sketchy, but we're really excited about it. We might find some life on other planets as well, but it's not like our solar system is teeming with life, which, if the universe was designed so that life could exist, then shouldn't it exist everywhere? But the universe is inhospitable to life, at least our type of life. But that doesn't mean that other type of life can't exist out there that we just haven't discovered. There might be an entity that is able to move around in the universe itself. In fact, we have found entities here on the planet Earth that survive the vacuum of space. So who's to say there isn't something like that, but even larger, on a larger scale, and has sentience? So it's just swimming around space going like, man, why do I exist? You know, or maybe it's figured out more than we have. I don't know. But nonetheless, just because our type of life might not exist if you changed one of these variables doesn't mean that no type of life could exist. A way to say all of this in a very brief sentence is, if things were different, they would be different. But they're not. And that doesn't mean anything at all, other than this is the way things are. Period. End of story.
And it is too improbable to be an accident. Dr. Roger Penrose from Oxford University calculated the probability of a universe that can support life. He found that it is 10 to the 10th to the 123rd to 1 against our universe being able to support life, or any other universe. To give you an idea on how big that is, to write the number in 10-point font would take up most of the Milky Way galaxy. That's like setting up a monkey with a keyboard and asking it to type out the entire works of Shakespeare. So if he came back...
So real quick, he just performed an appeal to authority, cherry-picking of said authority, appeal to analogy, and meaningless statistics. So that's 4 additional fallacies there.
And he saw all of Shakespeare's stories just stacked up neatly right next to the monkey. Would you think the monkey did it by accident? Or do you think someone must have set it up? For life to exist in the universe, we need energy with low entropy. Entropy is how things move from an organized state to a disorganized state, meaning that chaos increases. In terms of entropy, science says we cannot get order from disorder. For the universe that exists, it must have started with very low entropy and a very high temperature, and scientists say that is very unlikely. A higher temperature would have meant no planets and no suns.
Once again, citations would be great. What scientists have said this? Just wondering if you could provide some reference at all. But yeah, if things were different, things would be different.
The universe is so finely tuned that if anything was out of place by the smallest bit, the universe could not support life, like a car engine. If anything in the engine was out of place by the smallest bit, you couldn't start the car. The engine would not run.
Oh man, now I've got to go and disprove that this is true. And there's only one way to do that. To go outside! Oh, it's so bright out here. Oh man, the things I do to prove that an analogy is false. Come on, let's take a ride. Whew, okay, so demonstration. Alright. Vroom, vroom. Alright. And then pop the hood. Now, I don't know anything about cars other than where the gas goes, so I could potentially be screwing my car up, actually my brother's car up, just for a point. Hold on. How the heck do you open that? What the... See, this is... Hold on. Here, you wait there in this tree. Okay, well, don't fall. You're very... You know what, I'm going to tie you to the tree. Da-da-da. Tie you to the tree. There you go. Alright. You stay there. Figure out how to open this thing. There we go. Alright. Now where's the thingamajigger that you put? There it is. Alright, you. Ready to come back here. Okay, so let's see. We've got... Now, was I recording that whole time? Because I don't know. Okay, anyways, so we've got this engine. And, he said if anything was out of place. He said if anything was out of place, that it would not start. So here's the thing. So that's out of place. That shouldn't be. Alright. Oh my word, it started! It started with that thing out of place!
Some theoretical physicists try to explain this coincidence by bringing up the possibility of a multiverse, which theorizes that there are trillions upon trillions of universes, and we just happen to be in one that supports life. But that multiverse also had to have had a beginning, and by the way, the multiverse is completely theoretical, with no evidence whatsoever. I'd like to bring up one last point. Naturalists believe that nothing exists but nature. But if naturalists are correct, then we are nothing more than atoms and chemical processes.
It's an appeal to consequence. Oh no, we're just atoms and molecules and subatomic particles and chemicals. Oh, how horrible. So that can't be true, because if it's true, then things I don't like would also be true. So I'm gonna pretend like it's not true, because I really don't want it to be true.
No different from the atoms and chemical processes of a star. But we do not put judgment on a star.
I know this is going to be really hard for you to understand, but humans are not stars.
We wouldn't say a star is immoral. We wouldn't look at the activity of a star and say it's good or bad. It's just natural.
Hey Dan, did you know that our sun's going to go supernova in 2 weeks' time? Oh man, that's really bad. You can't say that word because you're a naturalist. Actually, I'm not a naturalist, but yeah, and as a naturalist, you can't use the word bad because that's a moral thing. And we wouldn't call a star going nova bad. It's just a star. It's natural that it's going supernova in 2 weeks' time. You can't use the word bad. Okay, I guess. That's really unfortunate. No, you can't say it's unfortunate in a naturalistic worldview. Things just happen. You know, I'm glad the sun's going supernova in 2 weeks' time. You can't say glad because in a naturalistic worldview.
However, we do not look at human life this way. We do not say the lion is immoral for killing the gazelle. However, we do look at Hitler's actions and judge them to be bad, wrong, even evil. If good and bad exists, we must ask why it exists. If there is such thing as value, we also must ask why. Does one thing have more value than another? Is a baby's life more valuable than a dandelion's? Why? If there is any judgment, then naturalism cannot justify it. But I bet my teachers will judge my homework, and they can only do so because my actions matter, because I matter. The naturalists must say that the material and processes that make up a living person is no more or less value than a flower. However, I believe that babies are more valuable than a weed. I believe Hitler's actions can be seen as bad. And I believe that I have value and my actions matter. Don't you have value? Don't your actions matter to you? To your friends? To the people around you?
We have a total of 41 logical fallacies. If you do email him, please be polite in your email. Don't ask loaded questions like, where did you plagiarize all your material from? Although that is a question I'd love to get the answer to. Asking it in that way would be unfair because it's a loaded question. But if you do email him and he does respond, let me know, because I'd be interested in what you asked him and what he answered. He didn't respond to my comment on his YouTube video, and I'm going to post this video as a comment on his YouTube video, so maybe I'll email it to him as well, just to see what he has to say. But if you do email him, please be polite. At any rate, we don't have any empirical evidence because he said that there is none, even though earlier in the video he said he was going to give us scientific evidence, but he never did. We also don't have any tests that we can perform that I'm aware of, because he offered us none. That would leave us only with a logically coherent argument, which we don't have. And unless and until we have a logically coherent argument, we must remain skeptical of his conclusions.